Hey, fortunate ones. Welcome back to Fortunate Living. I'm Nadine, and I am a registered nurse who loves my career as a nurse, but was also led to homeschool my children. So today I'm going to do a video about why the summertime is the absolute perfect time to kind of test drive homeschooling if it's something that you're being led to do. It's the end of the school year. Whatever has happened this previous school year, you're moving into a transition period now where you're going to be able to relax and really sit back and figure out what you want to do for the next year. Your kids might already be registered for school next year, and that's okay. If you're undecided, leave them registered. You have plenty of time just before school starts. If it's like a public school or a charter school where you could go in and officially unenroll them if you change your mind, if you like the way it goes over the summer. I know it's not easy. It's not easy taking that big jump. It's a leap going from what most people do in our country. I think there are only about 4 million homeschoolers, which is a major jump. When I started, there were only about 1.5 million. We're up to about 4 million homeschoolers now. I love it. I love people taking control of their children's lives and making that choice to homeschool if that is what they're led to do. Schools work. I went to school. Most people I know went to school and we're successful, but this is if you're being led to homeschool. So you take this time over the summer. I would say the first step would be to get to know your children. I'm not just talking about what they like to eat, what their attitude is like get to know your children from an educational standpoint. Things that we might not have to pay attention to even as their parents. For instance, what is your child's learning style? Even if you don't do a whole learning style workup, you could be observant and see that, okay, this child always has to lean in and look at me when we're talking. Whereas the other child, they can still be chilling on the sofa, not even looking up at you, looking at the TV from the couch and still engage in a perfect conversation with you. If that child can listen to the TV, not miss a beat on their anime show, and talk to you, you got an auditory learner. It's leaning in that direction. If you have a child that they have to pause the show, turn around and look at you, that more than likely that child is leaning towards being a visual learner. So that would affect how you would approach teaching the child, and you want to know that. Your visual learner, you're going to want to use a teacher's textbook and a student textbook. You're not going to try to just read from the one student textbook and explain things to them and teach them things. They need to have their own book as a visual learner for it to be easier for them to grasp the concepts or just follow along as you're reading the instructions to them. The auditory learner, you might be able to save your money and not buy an extra textbook for them because they will hear you just fine when you read it out loud to them. Those little things are what I mean when I say get to know your child. Really get to know them, because it'll make all of the other steps as you're progressing, with whether or not you're going to homeschool so much easier if you get to know the child and their type of learning that's best for them. And I always also say figure out what your learning style is too, because if you just get something that's completely for them and then it's causing you trouble, that's not going to work either. So get something that will work for the both of you to have the best outcome with your learning. And don't assume that that your children's learning styles are the same. I have 3 children that couldn't be any more different. My first child was diagnosed with autism when she was 3.5. We were told to put her in an institution. Her learning style, she had deficits in all areas. Auditory, she had deficits in visual, that affected her being able to write, read, everything. And then she was hyperactive, so she couldn't sit down. And not necessarily that helped her learn any better, But I needed to know that. I knew with this child, homeschooling her, that there was no way that I was going to be able to be like, okay, here's your textbook, here's my textbook, let's sit down and do this lesson. Everybody would have been mad in here, right? Then my second child, he's a child that very highly intelligent. It was obvious from the time he was in, just a little boy. He was reading at home, and I really don't even remember spending a lot of time teaching him to read. I was working with his special needs sister, and I really think he's such an auditory child. He was be over there playing as a baby and was catching on. Because when he went to like pre-K 4, he already could read. So, but what goes along with that is homeschooling him, if anything is the slightest bit challenging, when he was younger, he would immediately say, that's stupid, I'm not doing that. Because he was so used to everything coming to him so easily that, and he knew he was intelligent. Even as a little boy, he knew he was intelligent. He would constantly question me, constantly want to discuss things. I worked night shift, y'all. The whole time I was homeschooling my children, I worked night shift. So it required a lot of patience and prayer, reminding myself to manifest the fruit of the Spirit while homeschooling these children. So he was completely different from her. Then we had our surprise blessing, Nate the Great. He come rolling out when I'm 40. And I think God knew, oh, she's 40. Let me give her an easy one. So he loves learning. He will put the work in. But when I sent him to school, sent him to kindergarten, he was so cooperative that I think he was just ignored. And things didn't come easy to him, especially reading. So he was ignored. We paid for private school, for kindergarten, paid for private school. When it got to first grade, Thanksgiving break, and he still wasn't reading. Mind you, I had not only paid tuition, but I had also paid for private reading lessons with the teacher that was supposed to be the wonderful reading teacher at the school. And I guess she was, because everybody else was reading except my child. So I couldn't even wait till the summer to take him out. I remember I just waited until Thanksgiving break and took him out. But summer is a better time to do it. So first thing, get to know your child, get to know their learning styles, get to know what type of curriculum you think you might want to use as well. And you can go on website, look up homeschool curriculum, just type in homeschool curriculum. All these homeschool curriculums will come up. Their web pages are usually really interactive. They'll have like a blurb describing the curriculum, and it'll tell you who is best suited for. I would say if they have a whole big kit, maybe not do that. I did that many times and didn't use a lot of the things in the kit. Start off really slow. Maybe try to buy things used. So go on the regular website of the curriculum, take a look at it, then see if you can get it on Amazon, eBay, or if there are any like used homeschool stores in your area. They're all over now. Compared to when I started, oh my goodness, homeschooling is so popular now. So even try buying stuff secondhand or used until you see if it's something that before you make a huge monetary investment. You can also take the summer to figure out what your philosophy surrounding your homeschool is, meaning there's so many different types of homeschooling. So there's classical homeschooling, there's where they have Montessori, you can do Montessori, they even have Montessori homeschool curriculum. Look it up, you'll see it. Then there's unschooling, which I feel like if I look at the spectrum from like school at home, where some people just replicate school the way it is in the brick and mortar school with textbook, tests every week, different things like that. That's what they call school at home. And then way on the other side of the spectrum is unschooling, where it's you know, as far as I know, any unschoolers, correct me, where it's like you don't use textbooks, you do all environmental learning. Like you'll just teach the child fractions if they come help you bake some cupcakes. You never whip out a textbook. Let me see. And then the child just leads and the parent just goes with the flow. I didn't even try that. That was not going to work with my personality, with me working with my daughter with her special needs. And let me say, I never tried it, but I just felt like that was going to be insanity in my house. I'm going to let the inmates run, the asylums run the zoo, but the animals run the zoo. Like, I just could not figure out in my organized mind how I was just going to let them run it. So we initially started off with school at home, and it was a classical curriculum that I used. That's just what I was used to. My oldest son had gone to a classical Christian school for 2 years and thrived. And then I would just have to tweak the curriculum to my daughter with special needs, just trying to make it more visual for her because it wasn't very visual. It was repetitive. That really helped. There was singing, like with Latin and different things, that helped her. So I just was using the same curriculum for them. Let me see. And then, so that's the second thing. Figure out, get to know your child and how they learn best. Get to know yourself, how you learn best. Then take a look at how you want to set up your dream school, what type of curriculum. Look at your schedule. How many days a week do you want to school? And it doesn't have to be Monday through Friday. You look at all of those things. This is your freedom to create the dream school that your family wants. I would say another thing that I would recommend doing over the summer is getting your child on board. I mean, you could easily just snatch your child out of school and tell them that you're going to homeschool them. But that one child I have, if I didn't get him on board, he would have not stopped questioning me, telling me about why he needed to go back to school. So I spent that first summer the reason he left his classical Christian school was because we moved to Colorado. I assumed that when we got to Colorado, we would find another school that I felt comfortable with. We did not. So that's how he, was homeschooled. And then it was wonderful. Like, it was the best thing that could have happened. Because my intention was only to homeschool the special needs child, and that was to just keep her safe because she had been attacked at school in kindergarten. That's a whole nother story about the safety. So when we got to Colorado, we're looking for a school for him. I couldn't find a school for him. So then I'm like, well, let me just homeschool him until I really get the lay of the land. And it was perfect for our family, especially when we moved out of state with no family. I had a 9-month-old, a child on the spectrum, and then the child that I was looking for a school for. So it turned out, and my husband traveled. So, and I still worked part-time in Colorado. I still worked with a sweet, they had a respiratory hospital there. It was wonderful. Because I love being a nurse. I don't know what your career is, but I had my career 10 years before I got married, before I had kids. I love that life. I love that part of me. So I didn't want to give that up. People say, oh, your husband made enough. Why didn't you stay home? So I tried that a couple times. It wouldn't last long. I was used to having my money do what I want to do. So when I would still work, is so I could have my money. And I love what I did. I was providing a service. I love it. I was called to be a nurse. So you don't have to give up your career, but don't get in the trap of being a superwoman either. We'll do another video about that. This is about how you can use your summer. So based on your schedule and your desires for creating your dream school, figure out how many days a week. That's what we were talking about. How many days a week, what days a week you want to school. And then you might have to get the children on board. It took bribery to get that middle child on board and just not to complain or question, as I was saying earlier. So the bribery was, oh, guess what? We'll get to go on a class trip every month, because in school, that's all the kids are waiting for. The end, they go on a class trip around Christmas time, and then they would go on a class trip at the end of the year. That was it. They would go on 2 class trips, and that was it. So think about it. He was 7, so I bribed him, and I was like, "Look, Grant, we'll be able to go. We'll be able to go on a class trip every month. We will. Where? Him. You just can't fool him." So I was like, "Oh, well, we can go skating. We can go. We can go to a museum every other month. We can go." I'm trying to think of all the things we did. Oh, and then I also said we can go to Disney World when everyone else is in school. And that way, Grant, Destiny, you won't have to wait in line as long because everybody else is in school. Can you imagine? It won't be as crowded at Disney World. We'll almost have the park to ourselves. It won't be as hot because we don't have to go in the summertime. Now, we always would go summertime and Thanksgiving, but it's maddening at Disney World in Thanksgiving. But that's when we could go around his school schedule. So he liked the idea of that, and that worked. Like, that was enough. And then I held true. I didn't have to do some big field trip. We would do little things in the neighborhood, community theater plays, things like that. It broke up the monotony for my kids, and they loved it. So that's one thing. Now, I will say that first year homeschooling, I did join a co-op. We did classical conversations. I think, it's a good co-op. It works for people. And that year in Colorado, it worked okay for us. It was great because we didn't know anyone. We didn't know a soul except my husband's new coworkers that he was working with, and they didn't have, everyone's children were grown. And then my coworkers, where I was working at, I didn't work around a lot of other nurses. It was like a private duty nursing I did with, unfortunately, a family that they had 2 children that had terminal diseases. It was a genetic terminal disease. So, oh my gosh, let me just talk back about job satisfaction. I would have had the craziest day at home with this newborn, with this child on the spectrum, with Mr. Inquisitive, question everything, and would be like, oh, I'm so tired. It was such a hard day homeschooling these 3 children that are not in pain, healthy. And then I would go to work to serve this family, and it would just put my entire day in perspective. And I would be so grateful that I was there so that this mom, who happened to be a nurse as well, she was a nurse as well, but retired. She was older. And to serve her and her husband so they could just have a normal life, because I was only going there 8 hours a day. They had been taking care of these children their entire lives, and they were in their 20s. And they had been debilitated their entire life. So I feel like when you get out of your own challenges, it really makes you appreciate and be grateful for your home and what you have, and that people have it so much worse. So I'm sorry, I'm always going off on a tangent, but those are the types of things that I would reflect on when homeschooling did get hard, because it's not easy having these children here all the time. It's not easy, but it's a labor of love, and I do enjoy it. I have to say I enjoy it. I don't know if I would enjoy it as much if I didn't get that breakaway to go to work. Another thing, you do want to consider what type of employment you have, because you don't want a job that's too stressful. Like, for instance, I don't know if I would have been able to homeschool when I was a new grad. I worked med-surg. It was nonstop, crazy nonstop. I worked ortho. I don't know if I could have handled that demanding of a nursing position and still have gas in my tank for my babies and my husband. I just don't know if that would have worked, because I used to be exhausted, spent when I came home from med-surg. So actually I can say I could not have taken that. So you might also want to look at what type of work you want to do, something that you really enjoy, that's not stressful, but still gives you, if you're working because you need the money, working because you want to advance your career, what else can you do to make that work around homeschooling? So I think that's just some tips I wanted to come give you as we're heading into summer. Actually, all the schools here in Texas, the last schools, they get out, we're already out, the classes that my Nate takes, and then the public schools, most of them get out next week. So we're at the end of our year, but I know up in the Northeast and elsewhere, the year might be winding down. So I would advise you maybe take a test drive. Take this time to take a little test drive to see how you want your homeschool to look. Try it out, and then perhaps you will be able to move right into homeschooling in the fall if that's what you desire. And it won't be as much pressure on you with just starting in the fall. And if you have to move a little slower, you might feel like, oh my goodness, we're falling behind. This isn't working, that isn't working. Just take a couple hours a day during the summer to focus on getting to know your children, creating the type of homeschool that you want, learning your learning style as well, and then coming up with your homeschool philosophy. Okay, if the desire is there and you're being led to do it, then you're supposed to do it. This is not something that would be bad for your children. And guess what? If it doesn't work out, you can always put them back in school. Don't feel like, oh my gosh, if I take them out, it's a complete disaster. No, the school is always there. The one son has been in and out of school based on it's been 10 years since I started homeschooling him. So it depends on what he needs year to year. And that's how we did it. And he's successful. He just finished his freshman year in college. His first semester, he had a 3.8. We don't have all the grades for this semester yet, but he's doing fine. And he is across the country going to college. He is nowhere near me. So it worked. And if it worked for me, it can work for you. If the desire is there, don't ignore it, because you can do it. Okay. All right. Love you. Bye.